Welcome to Speaking of. This is Ben,
And Dave,
and this week we will be talking about the beginning of Flash. So far, at this point, we have had 3 episodes leading into the season, and it seems pretty promising so far. And Dave and I are going to chat about them and share our thoughts on this outset.
yes, definitely. It's definitely been really good so far. I don't have anything bad to say about it per se. Um, the only thing, I had set this up for my original review of the first episode is they're falling into the same uh, tropes as other superhero television shows right now, where there's a team behind the Flash. Like we can't just have the Flash be the Flash.
Right. And they did the same thing back in the day with Smallville. They definitely have been doing that with Arrow over the past couple seasons. And even my wife, who was watching the premiere episode with me, noticed that it just seemed like there are almost blatant parallels within Team Flash to what they were doing on Arrow. Um,
Right.
so yeah, it is a little bit formulaic in that respect. Hopefully, they'll break out of that pattern as the season progresses, though.
Yes, but they're definitely holding as true as they can to the original Flash storyline. Barry gets struck by a bolt of lightning and gets his powers. Of course, in this case, the bolt of lightning is affected by a explosion from a particle accelerator,
Right.
which gives him his powers. Which is that's fine. You want to give a little more scientific reasoning behind it, as opposed to he was hit by a bolt of lightning and can walk super fast or run super fast.
Yeah. Bolt of lightning and some chemicals. It's a little bit of a thready explanation in for our modern audiences. So I do like the twist that they've sort of tied it to the particle accelerator accident, and it basically also set up again, sort of a previously done trope of having, this is something they did with Smallville, in that
Yes.
when Clark came, there was a huge meteor shower, and that caused, lots of other people to be affected by that same meteor shower in various ways, that the meteor rocks affected them, which felt a bit hokey and Monster of the Week off and on, but I think they've avoided that a little bit so far this season. But they are definitely going down that road a bit with Flash, and that there's a bunch of people who now have abilities, and the origin of those abilities has to do with the particle accelerator accident.
Right, right. I mean, definitely very Smallville esque. Um, I think now we're only in the third episode, so will we get tired of this? Um, I don't know. Like people got tired with it in Smallville, but the big difference here is in Smallville it was the Freak of the Week where they were creating characters for the show in the first, especially in the first couple seasons. And here we actually have actual villains from the DC universe that he's going up against because he's not Clark Kent or he's not Barry Allen running around really fast. He is the Flash. So
Right,
we have the actual rogues gallery that he's going up against,
right,
which I think is a big saving grace for the show. And also, since we are early in the show, we got an origin which um, they tied in a lot of things so far, which point to bigger storylines. And the first one being that Professor Zoom or the Anti Flash, however you want to call him, is definitely responsible for the murder of his mother, which is something that they brought into the comics later on. It wasn't always part of his original origin story.
right. But that's one of the benefits of this show coming at this stage is they can draw from, an array of stories that have come to fruition. They have, 50 plus years of source material to work from. Um, so that gives them a bit of a leg up that they can jump to those conclusions a little sooner and make for a much more cohesive continuity. And yeah, that was definitely teased in that very first episode where you saw the blur of red and yellow swirling around where his mother was when he was a boy, and the red blur broke off and saved him from the event. But clearly
Right,
his mother didn't make it out alive.
right, definitely. And then we all know that it has been, they've used that storyline in modern books to tell the story of Flashpoint,
Hmm.
where Barry goes back in time to stop the murder of his mother
Right,
and changes the entire universe,
right.
basically. So I don't know if they're going to go that way. I have a theory that they're going to do it. Obviously, they're going to do it on a much smaller scale, with it being television.
Sure.
But I do think eventually they'll go that way.
Yeah, it seems like they're definitely leading into that direction. We'll see how closely they play to how things were drawn in the comics. I tend to believe that they'll take some liberties. Um, and along those lines, they definitely are taking a lot of interesting liberties with the cast of players around him. I mean, they have sort of created some characters with the scientific team around him. Um, and least among those is Harrison Wells, who we're really not even sure who this guy is going to turn out to be. He clearly has uh, knowledge and information, and various other things under his belt that no one else is aware of, including technologies that are beyond our time.
Yes. Well, I mean, they made no. They hesitated not at all of showing that he was from the future. I think in the fact that in the very first episode, the twist at the end, Dr. Wells goes into his secret room and is looking at a newspaper from the future.
Right, from about 10 years in the future,
10 years
2024,
in the future. Yes.
where it's showing that Flash disappears in some crisis. Um, so yeah, definitely that sets up the whole crisis thought process, and that there's some sort of time travel paradox that might happen there. But also that obviously Wells himself is not of this time. And I think that it's a fairly clear nod that his name is a pseudonym, that Harrison Wells is a reference to H.G. Wells in the Time Machine. Um, but
Right. Right.
but who he will actually turn out to be is still anybody's guess.
Well,
But there are plenty of
let's.
opinions.
Yes. Yes. There are plenty of opinions. As we know, we live in the world of the internet, and
Oh, the internet.
there are plenty of opinions floating around. One of the ones that I saw that I don't like at all, obviously, is that he's Flash himself. He's Barry Allen himself, come back from the past,
Yeah,
from the future. It's like, why would he be doing any of this? He
yeah.
would
It definitely.
possibly
Go
he
ahead.
could possibly messing up his own timeline by coming back and helping himself out, which also he's not a murderer, and this
Right.
guy has murdered already in the
Right.
past.
There are definitely some things that seem antithetical to Barry Allen that Harrison Wells has pulled off. In the second episode, at the end, he did kill that one other scientist, um, and yeah, he definitely. I feel that he's a little bit, and also just Barry's character. He would not be the type to, in the third episode, we get a lot of flashback to the events of that fateful night, and amongst which you get a clear picture that Harrison Wells knows this outcome, knows that these things are going to happen as a result, and is steering towards them and is willing to take the casualties that come with it. Um, because he's watching, this ends with him seeing Barry's apartment and seeing him getting struck by lightning, with some hidden webcam that he has in his apartment. So he knew that those events were coming to fruition. Um, so there's those things are not things that I would see an older version of Barry doing. It doesn't fit the character that they've set up.
Right, right. And I, the main reason that this theory was online is because, and forgive me, I don't remember the actor's name who was playing Wells.
Tom
Looks a
Cavanaugh.
little. Sorry. Okay. Looks a little bit like the actor who plays Barry Allen.
Yeah, I guess
Um,
there is some. Tom Cavanaugh could look like an older version of what's his name, Gustin. Uh, I always forget his first name. But anyway, yes, they do bear some resemblance, but I don't know if it's enough to hang your hat on that theory.
However, there's the obvious thing that a lot of people are missing, and my gracious co-host here doesn't agree with this theory.
I didn't say it, I'm
Um,
not ruling it out.
um, all of us know that
All of
I
us,
can't.
by all of us, Dave means the greater Deep Geek community. Um,
Yes,
who
Ebord Thawne, or however you want to say that name,
I'll say Eobard,
Thane, Abard Thane.
Eobard Thane,
Yes. Um, the Reverse Flash or
Professor Zoom.
Professor Zoom was so obsessed with Barry Allen because in the comic books he is in the 25th century and he becomes extremely obsessed with the Flash, Barry Allen, so much so that he develops uh, technology to give him the powers of the Flash. At the same time, um, he also gets plastic surgery to look like Barry Allen. That's how obsessed he is with him. And then he goes back in time, and the reason that he messes with Barry Allen in this time or whenever is because he's always trying to make him a better hero. So far, Wells feels like he's on that road where he's
Yeah, I will.
worried about him being a hero.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I can see how that could fit. That that version of the Flash, Eobard Thawne, um, the Reverse Flash could fit in that if Harrison Wells was an older version of that character, and if he went, did some, like you said, some reconstructive surgery to make himself look a bit more like um, Barry Allen, then sure, I could see that fitting. Um, but my question is that if that theory holds water, I still feel that Eddie Thawne is not a red herring. That he is going to be at least the first version of Professor Zoom, some point in the near future. That we will see that transformation soon. Um, but it'll be interesting how that plays out. And they definitely, I don't. Granted, Eddie Thawne being the police partner uh, to Detective West. Um, I don't know that I necessarily see. I don't see Eddie becoming. Eddie doesn't seem patient enough or smart enough to evolve into what Wells is.
Okay, so along those lines, the we have a co-host who is not here with us tonight, Pete.
God rest his soul.
Um, that was just wrong. Who his theory is that they're one and the same person, and that Wells is just him from the future who's come back before he's gotten his powers, which means they'd be shifting his timeline from the 25th century to the 21st century, just 10, 20, 30 years in the future,
Right.
um, which is possible. I agree with you that Eddie, they haven't portrayed him as smart enough yet. He comes off as just a cop,
Yeah.
but is that all an act? We
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah, that's true. We don't really know. Um, I'm still holding to a different theory, which I know that you vehemently don't agree with, Dave. Um,
No, no, not at all. Go
yes,
ahead. Ruin
but
all of our fans and
sure.
tell your theory.
I'm gonna hold to it till I'm proved otherwise, just because I think it's an interesting one. And if I'm wrong, I'll admit that I'm wrong. But if I'm right, I'll be the only one. Um, and that theory is that Wells will turn out to be Booster Gold. That all those other things are true. That he is from the future. That he is trying to shape and steer Barry Allen into the hero he thinks he needs to be, but not necessarily as a double to someone who's already in the timeline. I think he's someone completely removed from the timeline who's come back to try to steer things and maybe find opportunities himself, which would fit the characteristics of Booster Gold.
I don't see Booster Gold as a killer though.
Booster Gold was opportunistic. He does. I mean, he does what he feels he needs to do to get by, and eventually he finds the way and becomes the hero that he needs to be. But he doesn't start off that way. I mean, part of the reason he ends up coming back in time to be a hero during the contemporary era is because he wants to make a quick buck off of it. Like he wants to get some fame and notoriety out of it that he can bank on.
Okay, all right. So for those watching this video, if you agree with me, put your comments down below. Say Dave's right. If you agree with the nutball, if you agree with Ben, put your comments down below. Say Ben is right.
So
because we need a quick poll. Who do you think's right? Is he Professor Zoom or Booster Gold?
So we shall see. We'll see what the verdict is eventually.
Yes.
We have a decently length season to work through these things and come to a conclusion.
Yes.
So
agreed.
So that piece aside, looking at the other relationships going on in Barry's life, we have the stuck in the friend zone with Iris, which I understand. I get it. I don't know how long they can play that game.
Well, here's the thing that's interesting about that relationship. We all know, and by we, I mean us who read the comics, know that that's his girlfriend from the comic book.
Right. His eventual wife.
His eventual wife. The twist in the TV show is that she was raised as, he was raised by Joe, who's his,
adoptive father. Right.
His adoptive father, her actual father.
Mm-hmm.
So they were kind of raised as brother and sister for a good portion of their lives. So she doesn't see Barry in that way, at least not yet.
Sure.
Which is one of the tropes we get from the CW.
Yeah.
There has to be angst,
right,
in the show, which is one of the things I think that's hurting the show a little bit. But hopefully they can do a twist on this and make it really interesting, come the reveal of either who Eddie is or that when Iris finds out that Barry has feelings for her.
See, I think one of two things can play out here. One, they can play the really long game on this and have, not have Iris and Barry get together at all this season and maybe leave that for a later season. However, I feel like when that happens, when they start coming together, it'll be after she's drifting apart from Eddie for one reason or another, and that'll be a catalyst to Eddie becoming the Reverse Flash to get back at Barry. So I don't see them waiting a long time on that. I think that's something they're going to want to play out this season. But if they do wait, if they play the longer game, if they wait out on that, I think that Barry's got to sort of let go for a bit, and I wouldn't mind seeing him and Caitlin Snow spending some time together. There's no reason that they always seem to not want to have these characters have relationships with people other than the ones they're canonically supposed to have relationships with. And I don't see why they need to hold to that so closely. Let some relationships happen. Let these things play out. It's natural. It doesn't have to go anywhere. It doesn't have to last.
All right, so you're just hoping Barry gets some before he, settles down. Is that what you're saying?
I just think he has to blow off some steam somewhere.
Right.
Besides by running all over the city and, By the way, I know this is all for special effects and for the look because it looks cool. But one of the most annoying things I find with the aerial shots of the Flash, and you'll probably notice this now that I pointed out, is like they'll have these aerial shots of him zooming around the city. Like going to whatever emergency that Cisco is pointing him out to.
Right.
He takes the most circuitous routes. Like he'll take like these bizarre angles where he's literally going blocks out of his way before he gets to where he's going.
I have noticed that, and it's very annoying. And it's again. I agree that it's just for that aerial shot of the special effect of seeing the red streak.
Right, because you want to see that red yellow streak. Go zooming across the screen a couple times, but don't do it in a way that makes it seem counterintuitive.
Like
right, exactly. It it makes him look like an idiot, like that he didn't know where he was going, overshot his mark, and ended up having to turn around.
Which they actually did have him overshoot his mark in one of the episodes.
Yes.
And he had to go back.
Right.
But yeah, like okay, once or twice, yeah,
Sure.
funny.
But constantly, it's kind of you get that guy a GPS.
There you go. Build a GPS into his costume.
Right.
Why does he need the people giving him directions for it?
His costume, though, I will say, is pretty cool. We didn't talk much about that, and I think that the costume they set up for him is really, really awesome. With all of the fact that he's got the headset and the earpieces, and the vital monitoring within the chest piece and all that sort of stuff. It was pretty clever, and that it was supposedly a repurposed fireman suit that Sisko had been designing.
Yes,
because of course he had.
Screw the fireman. The Flash is more important, is what we're saying.
We're not saying that firemen will never get these suits. They just, they don't have the funding right now to pay for production.
Poor firemen are always missing out over superheroes.
Right.
That's all I'm saying.
I mean, and obviously they've already shown that Barry Allen is very, very helpful in a fire. So
that is true.
So they need less of them anyway. So.
Well, there you go. So, all right, yeah. So, yeah, that definitely like. I've seen people complain, say, "Oh, it doesn't look like the suit from the comics," and it's like,
but it's a first version.
Number one, it's a first version, but number two, I do think it's a very fair modern interpretation of the suit.
Yep.
For the comics, look at, the Arrow costume right now. He doesn't look exactly like Green Arrow from the comics.
No, not at all. He's got a hood.
Exactly. Like, do you want him to look like Robin Hood running around fighting crime? No.
No, although it'd be interesting to see that. It'd be fun, just once.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, will the suit? I mean, I'm trying to remember the newspaper clipping from the future.
The suit looked the same. It looked pretty much the same. Like the shape of it was the same. Maybe it was a little shinier looking, but that could have been visual effects of the blur around him.
Right.
I'm glad they haven't been calling him the Blur so far.
Oh my God.
At least they came up with some other pseudonym. They came up with the Streak for now, until they finally give him a real name.
And Wells did tell us he would be called the Flash, so we, yes, no, and though they didn't explain with the costume the little thing sticking out of the side of the helmet for. You assume they're antennas.
They're probably antennas, but Sisko, they've made his characterization, childlike enough and clear enough that that he's the type of person that's gonna give it some flair. He's gonna play it up to be, to be lightning streaks because it's fun, because he wants Barry to be a superhero and he wants to live vicariously through him. So, but speaking of heroes, so far we only have one. So far we have the Flash.
Yes.
But there's definitely set up an inkling that, and we've had a number of villains. We've had Multiplex. We've had at least a version. We had the Mist, and we had whatever the first one was, the Weather Wizard. I believe upcoming this week we have what's his name? Captain Cold.
Yes.
So we've had mostly villains, but I'd like to see them have some other heroes come out of this accident. Have Barry not be the only one. And one of the ones they've started teasing towards, especially this past week, is Firestorm. So the character that we saw that was Caitlin Snow's fiance, that was in the tube when the accident went off. His character name is I'll have to look it up actually. It's Robbie something or other. Or no, his actual name is Robbie Amell is the actor's name. Ronnie Raymond, which is one half of Firestorm.
Right. And just so people are clear, we're not talking about Firestorm from Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends.
That was
This is the
Firestar. That was a diff.
Firestar. This is the DC
Yes.
Firestorm,
Right.
where it's the two characters formed together,
Right.
form Firestorm.
Right. And we saw them. That was actually, I want to say that character was conceived of for the Super Friends and then translated over to the comics later.
I believe so. Yes.
But it was basically the idea was there was a young teen and this very intelligent professor would sort of mind meld and become one character, Firestorm. And basically the teen was in charge, but the professor was in his head. So it'll be interesting to see how they play that out because again, Ronnie Raymond was the name of that character. And I've seen that there is casting for the other half of that pairing. They do have a guy on deck. I forget the name of the guy who will play that professor. The question is, how are they going to explain that? Because obviously Robbie was in the crossfire of that event within the particle accelerator. My best guess is they're going to somehow explain it like that wave of plasma energy or whatever it was, as it vents out into the sky, into the city, intersects with whoever the other half of that character will be, and basically he gets embedded inside of the professor, and somehow eventually he figures out how to sort of switch forms.
Well, that's a question. Would the fans be upset if they took a different route on that?
That's a good point.
Just had what's his name again?
Robbie Amell.
Robbie get the powers of Firestorm.
Right.
Just have the professor on a radio in his head telling him.
I could see that. Yeah, that could be. It could be a very good parallel to the way the Flash is operating right now. That basically, maybe the events that we've seen, Robbie sort of decorporealizes, goes, comes back together, Dr. Manhattan style, and intersects with this professor, and the professor sort of acts as his Harrison Wells, as his, Team Flash, to help him sort of ground himself and keep himself together and on the right path. Yes. So that's a possibility.
Yes, we don't want the Flash to get grounded though. Well, because Joe can come out at any time and ground him.
That's true, and he's come pretty close a few times.
So we're running a little long, and we haven't gotten to so many of the great things on the show. We haven't gotten to everything on the show.
Well, we'll be talking about the show several more times this season. So I think unless there's something else specific you wanted to address, Dave, I think we can.
I love the fact that, and again, I'm not so unprepared for tonight. The actor who played the Flash in the '90s TV show,
right,
played
John Wesley Shipp. Wesley Shipp was the original Flash in the late '80s, early '90s series, and he is playing Henry Allen in this series,
which I thought was a brilliant piece of casting.
Yeah,
and
it's a great cameo.
And again, they've done this they did it with Smallville in the sense of having Annette O'Toole play Martha Kent, who was
Lana Lang in the older movies.
In the movies. But it was just a nice nod to that series that, even though it was short-lived, a lot of people who watched it, myself included, really enjoyed. If they can get Mark Hamill on, not to play the trickster, but,
hopefully not.
Maybe the trickster's father.
I'm sure they'll find a way to bring more of them in. Mark Hamill might be a little bit hard to pin down right now, just with Star Wars underway. But
Star Wars.
I'm sure they'll be trying hard as they can to get him to cameo somewhere. I believe they already have some planned casting for the woman who was opposite John Wesley Shipp in that previous show to be in this show as well.
Yes,
Amanda Pays.
I've heard that as well. So I thought that was great. When they announced it originally, I thought he was just going to have a bit part in the pilot, and maybe once in a while they'd show him. He's been in every episode so far, and the story is revolving around him, being wrongly jailed,
Yeah.
for the murder of his wife. So obviously he'll be in the show a lot because now they're working to get him out of jail now that they know he's innocent. Well,
Right.
Barry and Joe know he's innocent.
Yeah. Yeah. Here's my one problem with that, though, is it seems like that's going to be a very difficult uphill climb to sort of prove his innocence. It seems like that's sort of an insurmountable case. Like even if like where are they going to find new evidence from? Like where are they going to come up with a way to prove that he's not responsible
Well,
for her death?
this gets to something that I think we can close on because I'm really worried that when they introduce this uh, factor into the show, viewers might drop off,
Okay.
and that is time travel. Again, we talked about it in the beginning.
Yep.
Time travel is a big part of the Barry Allen Flash. Actually, most of the Flashes, but obviously he has a villain from the future who's
Yep.
come back to fight him. He has traveled to the past and the future at different times. Again, he traveled back into the past in Flashpoint
Yep.
to stop the murder of his mother, which also
Had
could
ripple
lead
effects.
into had ripple effects, but also could lead into maybe he travels back to get evidence
Yeah. I
to prove his father innocent. Maybe that's what it sparks him to go back.
my only thought is I think that all that might be true, but I believe that I don't know if it's upcoming in any episodes in the near future, but I don't think that they will keep Henry Allen around long enough for his case for him to be exonerated. I think that for that time travel catalyzation to happen, I think that he'll get killed off, and that'll drive Barry even harder to try to turn things around.
Pause. My camera, I just ran out of space on my iPad. So my video stopped. So let's wrap it up right here.
Okay, so we got a lot of good ideas. We'll see what plays out in the rest of the season, but thanks for joining us tonight. And as usual, don't let your cape get caught in the door. Good night.